a little too eager there, but hi everyone, bonjour. My name is Claire Ferguson, and I'm the Communication and Outreach Coordinator with the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council, and I'm excited to be here with you all today and give you guys a presentation.
And Invasive Species Council folks.
Shelby should be here, but she might just be in the background.
Sorry, I didn't know if that's what you meant. Hi, I'm Shelby. I'm the project coordinator with the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Shelby et je suis la coordinatrice des projets de la cancer des espèces envahissantes de Nouveau-Brunswick. There you go. I tried.
On était disposé d'avoir Nathalie de Garden Cities. We were supposed to have Natalie from Garden Cities. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today, but we have a special surprise guest. And yes, our surprise guest is here. Sydney, take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sydney from SuccSeed Canada. I'm based in Newfoundland, Canada. Nice to meet you all. I'm the educational lead for SuccSeed. I've been in the agricultural industry for 13 years, even though I am quite young.
Awesome. So I want to keep us moving because we only have an hour. I'm going to share my screen. We have kind of a hybrid presentation. We have tons of content. On va essayer de voir le plus de content qu'on peut. J'espère que tout le monde a reçu le nouveau édition de Infobook. Did everybody get the new edition of the Infobook? I hope so. We're going to be mostly going off of that. Welcome, bienvenue. Maybe, Clara, are you able to double task and put that in the chat to download if anybody doesn't have it yet?
Yeah, I can do that.
Good. So a couple of links that I'm just going to put in the chat for you as well. Quelques liens. Oh, wow. Hydroponics kits. Yes. Oh, Heather, it's great to see you here. So if you would like to follow Sustainability Education Alliance on social media, vous pouvez le trouver le handle dans le chat. On a aussi le réseau Maker Naturel. C'est une collaboration avec Brilliant Labs, Labo Créatif. If you have an @NBEd email address, you can actually join this Teams network and collaborate with tons of other teachers there. It's right on your work site, so you don't have to switch or anything. That's only for if you are a New Brunswick teacher at the moment. And then we've also got those other links. Oh, well, you can find them. So one of the tools that we're going to be using today is Poll EV. So if you could please go to the website that you can see at the top there, or I'm also going to put it in the chat. This will help us have some interaction today and get a little bit more info to everybody. Donc, si vous pouvez suivre le lien dans le chat, ah ouais, oui, je vois quelques personnes ont le trouvé. We're not super happy yet, but that's okay. It's the end of the day. It's a Thursday. I'm tired. Probablement vous êtes fatigué aussi. Mais je vois que beaucoup du monde commence à le figure out. This is great. Yes. At least nobody's in the red, but if you were, that's okay. Come as you are. You don't owe us any happiness. So I'm just wondering where everybody's located. Moi, j'habite entre Moncton et Sackville, dans un village qui s'appelle Memramcook. I'm living in the homelands of the Mi'kmaq people. And as many of us probably know, this is one of the 5 nations that make up the Wabanaki Confederacy. So I would love to know where everybody is. Une personne qui habite ici. Oh, there we go. That's where I am too. Pretty close. And I think we even were expecting some people from out of province, so that's interesting too. Oh my goodness, who's in the ocean? Are you okay over there? So these homelands that we live in of a mixture of, most of us would be within either Wolastoqey or Mi'kmaq homelands, some of us in Passamaquoddy homelands as well. And these unceded, unsurrendered lands that were taken care of since time immemorial. I'm really worried about the person in the ocean. Really, are you okay? Est-ce que la personne qui habite dans l'océan est correcte, ou est-ce qu'il y a une petite île là, peut-être? Awesome. Oh, I see a lot of you are just writing your answers in the chat. That's okay too. Okay. And this question is also for our presenters to get a better understanding of the kinds of situation you're working with. I know that with some schools, you will have a lot more space if you're in an urban or rural area. And I wonder if that's true for all of you as well. On voit une personne qui est rurale. Oh, and that's funny. I see my translation of this question in English didn't happen. So is your school in a rural or an urban area? Moncton, St. John, Fredericton is what I would call urban, semi-urban. Wow, so almost everybody here is rural, it seems. That's fascinating. Et quelqu'un d'autre à même cook, ça c'est François, je pense. Des voisins. So one question I'd love to find out the answer to later is if whether or not your school has more access to garden space if it's rural. Une chose que j'aimerais savoir plus tard, c'est si que votre école rurale pourrait profiter de plus d'espace pour pousser des jardins. Okay. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. So I hope this cover page looks familiar to you. This is the info book that Clara had put in the chat earlier. And we're going to go through just a few of the types of gardens according to the specialists we have here today. The specialists are going to be mostly presenting in English, but please don't hesitate to type in the chat, raise a hand, and also I'll be putting in as much as I can to the chat at the same time. And then you'll also have lots of time afterwards to speak with presenters. On aura beaucoup de temps après de parler, pas en présentiel, mais dans les breakout rooms, dans les salles de réunion avec les experts. So if you have questions, you can feel free to ask them face to face. So I'd love to give this away to invasive plant species.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Somi. So hi, everyone. I know I just introduced myself, but if there's anyone that hopped in last minute, my name is Claire Ferguson, and I'm the Outreach and Communications Coordinator with the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council. So our organization is based out of Fredericton, but we travel across the province. just to put that in the back of your mind. And today I'm going to be talking about invasive plant species. To the next slide. So if you haven't heard of the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council yet, we are a network of NGOs, government, industry, recreational stakeholders, and kind of everyone in between who is interested in collaborating on invasive species issues across New Brunswick. So there's a few different ways that we go about our work. So a big one that we do is we want to promote and also enable collaboration across the province. So whether that is, between different organizations such as watershed groups, or even community groups as well that want to get involved, or individuals. That's something that we help to connect these groups if they want to have, do some bigger projects, and also to share information. Another one is we are a bit of a resource hub. So what we do is a lot of our work is, also with researchers and also with experts in the field to be up to date on the what's happening with invasive species, not just in New Brunswick, but also around us. And so that we can, if you're coming to us with any questions or, even just the simplest questions, or, if there's people looking for management options, we have those available to share. And then also a lot of the work that we do is community engagement, which is kind of my area of our work. So we work a lot with community groups. We love to attend events, and we're also, trying to, in this case, in your guys' case, work with, educators who are also sharing information and what invasive species are, and to share all of that with the public. So to dive into things a little bit more, you might be wondering, what is an invasive plant species specifically? So for a species to be considered invasive, it has to meet three main criteria. So the first one is that it is non-native. And what that means is that it's been introduced from elsewhere. So this could be, as far away as, across the world on a different continent, or even a species that is in its native habitat a few provinces over, but is not native here. Now, something that can be a little bit confusing sometimes about this is that we do actually have plenty of non-native species in New Brunswick that are not native, but they don't meet some of these qualities to consider them invasive. So the factor number 2 is that it spreads rapidly. So this is that the plant, it propagates very quickly. It's one of those that, if you put it in your garden by mistake, it will just completely take over. So as I had mentioned, there are some non-native species, such as, I think many of us are familiar with the tomato plant, that although it's actually not native, if you put it, in your garden, it's not going to completely take over your yard. Whereas these invasive species, if you let them, have an inch, they'll take a mile, literally and figuratively. And the third factor for considering if a plant is invasive is that it's harmful. So this could be a number of different factors, not necessarily just that it's hurtful to our environment, but it could also have negative impacts to the human health and also animal health, as well as economic health. So if a plant is non-native, spreads rapidly, and it's harmful, that's when we consider it an invasive species. So we can go to the next slide. So here are just a few impacts that invasive plant species can have. The first one is that they can compete with native species for resources, whether that's water, sunlight, or nutrients, and also space. As you can see in this photo, this is an invasive plant called garlic mustard, and it has completely taken over the forest floor. So because it's taken over, it is not going to give any of these native species a chance to take root and grow. Another one is decreased ecosystem services. So this would be floodplain prevention, flooding prevention. So if an invasive species gets into a floodplain area or even a wetland ecosystem, by changing the dynamics and the plants that would normally be there, sometimes these wetlands are not as good at absorbing water. So that's where we can get some higher water levels if there's flooding. As I mentioned in the earlier slide, there can also be impacts to animal and human health. So one of the ones that is quite common is with like quagga mussels, which are those little mussels. They're not a plant, but they can have impacts by cutting your skin. We also have giant hogweed. That's one I think many people have heard of, where the sap, if you get it on your skin and the sunlight hits that sap, it can cause burning and blistering. And also what's not shown is there are some invasive species where it's not good for in the agricultural area for different animals to be ingesting them. And the other one, which I mentioned too, is economic impact. So this could be recreation wise, if these plants attach onto your boat and get them all stuck, or they can also impact infrastructure by filling them up and making them not work as great. So these are just a few impacts, but we'll move on to a few examples as well. So as I mentioned, garlic mustard is one invasive species that will take over. An ornamental that we do have is Japanese barberry. We also, at the bottom, you can see two other ones that are purple loosestrife and Japanese knotweed. So you can just see from these photos that they unfortunately at some point have gotten out and they have started to completely take over their surroundings. So this is really what we're trying to avoid. And I do see the comment, yes, garlic mustard can be delicious. One of the ways that we're actually looking at combating invasive species is eating them. So that's not quite for this talk, but something interesting definitely to keep in mind. On to the next one. So I'm just going to go into a few examples and ways that you can help to prevent the spread of these invasive species in your gardens, whether that is at your school garden, if that's potted plants, or if that's an outdoor area. So one of the major points of this is when you're actually in the beginning process of planting your garden, you want to select plants that are either native plants or are non-invasive exotic plants, such as tomatoes. So I'll show you a little later on. We do have a few great resources that are great search tools that are from different parts of Canada and also from the US that you can use to search up different species and find out their native range. Yep, there's a few right there. So CanPlant is a Canadian search tool. So that's mostly focuses on kind of trees, bushes, and shrubs. But below that, there's two resources from the US. The top one is mostly focused on wildflowers, and the bottom one, which is the US Department of Agriculture. They have all different kinds of plants, but what I do like about that resource is they have a great distribution map. So you can see exactly where in different provinces and even in different states that these species can be found. Or if they're invasive, it'll tell you some information about how to get rid of them, which is great. Now so also in this process of when you're picking out plants, you do want to be cautious of ones that advertise themselves as being fast spreaders or vigorous self-seeders, kind of those aggressive ones, because often they are on the invasive side. Another one I want to mention, which is wildflower seed mixes. So seed mixes are, oftentimes viewed as, a great and easy way to get grow different flowers. Sometimes they'll even be marketed as, birds and bee flowers or pollinator flowers. But something that is not always advertised with these is in these seed packets, usually they'll have anywhere between 10 and 40 different seed and plant species, but oftentimes there are actually non-native species in these. So if you are looking to have some wildflower seed mixes, the recommendation that I would give is to take a look at the back. And if they do have the species listed out, just do some quick searches and make sure that there are native species. Another one that I would like to recommend is, making sure that your cleaning tools to prevent the movement, if you're getting rid of different plants that you might currently have. They might be invasive, just to make sure not to dump them, just in your compost or in your forest without hearing what they are, and not moving large amounts of soil that could have little pieces of plants in them. So on to quickly, I'm going to talk about rain gardens. If we can go to the next slide, if possible.
Oh, sorry, the other slide about, oh, so sorry.
Yeah, there's one more. Oh, no worries. So to quickly talk about rain gardens, which I think many of us are familiar with, as I mentioned, before putting these plants in, do some research online with the tools and see what species are native versus non-native. I've listed a few here, which are common in rain gardens and also are very water tolerant species, which is what you're looking for. And one thing too, to also keep an eye out for is in the subsequent years after you've planted your rain garden, is to keep an eye out that invasive species haven't popped up. So one way that invasive species can move is through their seeds through water. And if you're getting a lot of water coming into these drainage areas, then that's where these invasive species can pop up. So just something to keep in mind, that you may have started off with native plants, which is awesome, but to just keep in mind for those invasive species that may pop up later on. Something I did want to mention, which is that we use quite a bit, which is iNaturalist. So it's an app on your phone that what you can do is you can take it out into the, anywhere with you, whether you're on a walk or on a hike. You can actually take photos of species and have different people identify them. So what we actually use it for in our organization is people will take photos of invasive species, and then we can get them. And then that helps us to know in the province, where these invasive species are and if new one pops up. But I also would highly recommend this as a tool if you're unsure if, a plant that has maybe popped up in your garden or even one that you have purchased, if you're not quite sure what it is, this is a great tool to have, that you just upload a few photos and you can pretty quickly find out what you have. And on to our final slide. So that was a very, very quick overview, but I do want to say thank you, merci, for listening to this presentation today. If you're interested, I think this presentation will be available with resources, but if you are interested in other resources, feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have, whether that's about plant species or invasive species in general. And I did want to say something that as an organization, we're hoping to do in the next few years is to have more resources in French. But in the meantime, if you are a French teacher, I am able to speak a little bit of French. So feel free to send me an email, and we can look into and see if there's other resources out there as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you everybody for the patience about us not having interpretation today. I hope everybody's following along, and we are just about at the breakout sessions. We've got about 5 minutes to go. So Sydney, would you like to talk a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Sydney from SuccSeed. I've got my email there if anybody needs it, if you have any questions by the end of anything. All of us at SuccSeed are very versed in agriculture and growing indoors and outdoors. So we'd love to hear your questions or anything that you have around that. You can head on to the next slide there. So this is just a little brief overview about SuccSeed. We're a completely women-owned and run business, and that's our team there. Even our little pup, our office pup, is a female. So we are a certified B Corp corporation. So we are held to some of the highest standards of eco practices, and we had to go through some rigorous testing to get there. We also work with Choices for Youth. So all of our products are made here in Newfoundland. They are done by some underprivileged youth that are here in the city. And they do all of the those yellow containers that you see behind me, the yellow lids. They build those completely from scratch with DeWalt tools that we provided them. And the third thing we have is our sustainable superheroes. They're just kind of a thing out of 2020 that kind of just came from our team. It's basically the UN's 17 sustainable goals, just broken down into 17 different superheroes so that they're a little easier for kids to understand. So today I'm here really to talk to you guys about hydroponics. That's mostly what we do here at SuccSeed is hydroponic systems. So you can pretty much grow anything that grows above the ground in hydroponic systems. There are 3 different kinds, actually. There's aquaponics, hydroponics, and then there's aeroponics. So there are positives and negatives to everything, of course, just like in life. So in hydroponics is what I'll start with. Those are what our SuccSeed gardens are. So hydroponics means water working. So the seeds are grown in a rock wool medium. The roots are suspended in this tank of water here, and all the nutrients are mixed in the tank so that the plants can continuously have exactly what they need 24/7. The light is on a timer. So for teachers and things, it's super easy because they can just kind of set it and forget it. You don't really need to do much with it besides just filling up the tank at the beginning and setting it up. The aquaponics, they are very similar to hydroponics. The only difference is that you have fish that you can also harvest that are living below the water. The fish are what provide your plants with the nutrients and things. So it's a bit more of a natural process. You're feeding your fish, the fish waste is being used by the plants grow, the fish grow. It's just a big, nice eco cycle. The third one we have is aeroponics. That is called, referred to as air working. So aeroponics are actually quite exactly the opposite of hydroponic. So instead of sitting in a tank of water consistently, they're actually just sitting out in the air and taking up air consistently. And they're being sprayed or misted with water and nutrients at all times. So a little history behind those. The earliest one is our hydroponic system. So it can be traced back to 600 BC. In China, they were using a lot of hydroponic systems between rice fields. In each section, the plants do get their nutrients in a very similar way. Of course, it's obviously absorbed by the roots, but we find that the aeroponics are a little bit noisier because as they have to spray consistently to get the plant's nutrients, that's just one downside of that guy. And the oxygen to the roots, that's just one thing that we've found more of a challenge with hydroponics and aquaponics, where the aeroponics, the roots are consistently in the air. We don't have to worry about that. But for the aquaponics and the hydroponics, you do need to have an air pump system. So of course that does use electricity as well. So that is a little kind of roadblock there with that. But our SuccSeed gardens here that you see behind me, we've developed them so they can run on 30 cents of electricity a day. So they're very affordable once you get them in your classroom. And you can grow a variety of things in all these. So you can grow everything from corn right onto pumpkins in these systems. As long as it grows above the ground, you guys are good to go with hydroponics, aquaponics, or aeroponics.
Sorry, I just wanted to share with everybody the picture that Heather just put into the chat because it's incredible. So this is from Heather's classroom. And sorry to interrupt the presentation and then get lost, but this is so cool. I can't wait to drop into Heather's breakout room. Okay. Back to the slideshow.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the children find the most fun is that you can actually take up those hydroponic little bins and you can see actually how many roots have grown and how the plant is producing and how it's bringing everything up. So like right here, hydroponic growing, it's water rather than soil. It can be done year round because it's inside And I'm down here in the basement of my home. So really you don't need a ton of light either. The light that's provided with the SuccSeed garden is sufficient enough to get you growing with lots of things. Of course, a con is that it can take up space, and there can be an issue with mold and mildew if you don't have an air stone constantly providing water, or sorry, air and going through. Those air pumps really do fix the issues of the mold and the mildew and things. Really, the stagnant water is a huge issue for hydroponic gardens. So as long as you have some kind of pump or something going through, then your fish will have a lot more oxygen, your plants will have a lot more oxygen, and just the constant movement of water is really great for the plants. So a vertical garden, that's like the aeroponic systems we were talking about. So it's great because you can put so many in a small space. You're growing them up towards the sky, so you're not losing any space at all. I mean, some of those plants can take up a ton of space, especially if they're climbing, like cucumbers or tomatoes or things like that. They really do want to grow up. So vertical gardens are a great option. A con is they can be expensive to build, and they can blow down in storms. Also, they can be quite noisy. If you have them in a classroom, it's kind of like if you're putting a water pressure system, like cleaning your deck every 10 minutes or so. So it can be a little distracting for students. And wicking beds, so that's another thing that we do here at SuccSeed. We actually grow microgreens here. So we have little microgreen kits that we send out to schools, and it was kind of a idea out of COVID, because a lot of the children, of course, you can't take a huge garden home with you, and they're quite expensive. So of course, this isn't feasible for a kid to take home. So we came out with little microgreen kits. They're completely do-it-yourself. You just use a glass from your house. We provide the little wicking bags and the seeds and the peat discs, and the kids really seem to love them. They come with little growing journals, and they can just track them, especially if they can't be face-to-face with a teacher. At least they have something that's hands-on. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Thank you so much. A way to come in with very little notice.